Guess who's back, 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 back again, again. True Crime with Kylie's back, back, back. Tell a friend. I honestly have no explanation for that. Welcome back to True Crime with Kylie. We're back, y'all. I apologize for that hiatus I took because school started back up for us. And as y'all know, I'm a high school teacher, and so most of my focus was on, kind of readjusting to what 2020 brought. I'm on Christmas break now, and I am going to try to incorporate more videos, when school does start back up. But I'm so excited to get back to it. And this case that I'm starting up with, I don't even know how to explain it. One, the guy looks really creepy. The guy's just scary looking. He's just a scary looking man. Like, his eyebrows, go like this. And Shout out to Ashlyn Papazideris for actually bringing this one to my attention. I've heard about this guy before, but didn't even think about making a video about it until she brought it up. All research and credit for this information I'm getting is from Wess Haubrich, medium.com. This article went into great detail about this specific case, and I'm so excited to share it with y'all. In that case, let's get started. This case is about the monster father from Austria, Mr. Josef Fritzl. Josef Fritzl Jr. was born on April 9th, 1935, to Josef Fritzl Sr. and Maria Fritzl. He was born in Amstetten, Austria, and he was the only child. To say that his childhood was not the best would really be an understatement. Josef Fritzl's mother, Maria, was a penniless drifter who met Josef Fritzl Sr. Not long after they met, they had him, and they lived on 44 Ebestraße in Amsterdam. Now, Ebestraße, I can't even say it. Ebestraße is spelled like this, and I read it as Ebestraße, because it has a fancy P. But I looked at the pronunciation. Can't even say pronunciation. And it's Ebestraße. And get this fun little, this really isn't a fun note, but guess who was only about 90 miles away from their house? Adolf Hitler. Hitler Adolf. The Nazi. You can't make this up, guys. In 1939, when Joseph was just 4 years old, his mother, Maria, kicked his dad out to the curb. And this is a very significant piece of information to remember, because this will kind of also factor into his evilness that he became. On March 7th, 1938, when Joseph was about 3 years old, he actually saw Hitler. Just casually. He would go on to blame that interaction for the reasons behind his deranged behavior. Not just that specific interaction, but he blames a lot of stuff. But I don't remember anything when I was 3 years old, so I highly doubt you did too, Joseph. I mean, if you want to put the blame on Hitler, I get it. If you're gonna put the blame on someone, might as well be him. But no, that's not the reason why. Also, I always have nails on, and my hands are just really small for my body. So I keep looking at my hands thinking like that one guy from Friends when he's like, I have such small hands. Oh gosh. Oof. So on top of Joseph's many reasons as to why he did what he did later on in life, one of the other reasons was that his father was kicked out of the house. And so that put a lot of shame and guilt on Joseph. And, you know, getting shunned back then was like a huge deal. And so he was so embarrassed that he was the son of a guy who just got shunned. And also this hatred for his dad simmered every day throughout the rest of his life. So imagine when he's older, he has a loathing hatred for his father. Let's dive into good old Maria, shall we? People had nothing but the most kind things to say about Maria. Totally kidding. She was apparently, as a lot of people stated, an off-balanced person. And she made it very well known to her friends and family that she wanted a child, but she didn't want the responsibilities of having a child. This isn't a pick and choose thing, Maria. Like, what? I can't even explain it. Like, don't have a kid then. Like, She would often berate and just neglect Joseph. When he was just 10 years old, she would just leave for long periods of time. And one of those long periods of time in 1945, she got arrested due to her fiery attitude. And so Fritzl, at the age of 10, ends up getting put in an orphanage. And the orphanage tells him, your mom's dead. When she's not dead. And so a couple years later, after the war ended, she was able to get him. And so, like, imagine being like, Mom? You're alive? Like, good to say, you two are still living? I feel that it's a blessing and a curse that I can make myself laugh. Someone's got to do it. A couple of years later went by. Maria was still abusing and neglecting Fritzl. But when he was 15 years old, he finally stood up to his mother. And unfortunately, though, this is when Fritzl's deviant habits began to form. Well, this is so gross. Okay. Well, actually, this isn't the grossest thing you're about to hear, but it's one of the really gross things. He would often wander around Amstetten, listening for young couples making love. He would actively look for that and listen in. You know, after roaming the streets, you know, listening for people doing it, his revenge against his mother escalated. In 1980, she became very ill and bedridden. And what Joseph decided to do was lock her in her own attic and leave her there to die. And later on in life, when the prison psychiatrist asked him why he did it, he said, it's simple. I wanted revenge. I mean, I'm all like, you know, revenge. So, Mr. Fritzl, what was the reason behind you locking up your mother and leaving her to die? Why, you ask?
I did it for revenge against my mother.
Okay. This layer. That seems like a good enough reason. Fritzl's voyeurisms began to escalate even more, as is the case for most sexual psychopaths. Instead of going from nuisance kind of stuff like peeping Tom, listening for people having sex, it began to escalate to him showing himself to random women that he would see, and also getting very aggressive with prostitutes in the red light district of Linz. In 1951, at the age of 16, Fritzl decided to head to Linz to become an engineer. And engineers were very much in high demand after the war, and so he felt like he could pursue that and make a life out there. Five years later, he ended up meeting his wife, Rosemary, who was just 17 at the time. So he was 22. Yeah, he was 22. No, he was 21. Whatever, math is hard. He was 21, she was 17, and he met her while he was working at a firm as a technical assistant. He told his friends he was very impressed with her because she seemed very obedient. He said he was impressed with her because she seemed very obedient. She's not a dog, dude. Like, come here, Rosemary. Come here. Like, by 1963, Joseph and Rosemary were married with 3 children, 2 daughters and 1 son. But on April 8th, 1966, their 4th child was born, and her name was Elizabeth. With the birth of his 4th child, it added more stressors to his life. And to handle those stressors, he reverted back to his old sexual predatory habits, especially when he would go overseas, because there wouldn't be as much eyes on him. And so he kind of saw it as a free-for-all whenever he would leave. Usually when people get stressed out, they'll go talk to someone about it, or they'll go on a walk, or do some yoga, or I don't know. But who the crap goes and does that when they're stressed out? I don't like you, Fritzl. Ugly Austrian bear? I don't know. In 1967, believe it or not, his crimes escalated. He ended up following a mother all the way home and raping her at knife point with her newborn sleeping in the cot next to them. He was arrested for that, but he only got 18 months in jail for that crime. And also, back in the day, thank God this law is not there anymore in Austria, that they can get a rape charge expunged from their record after 10 years. So after 10 years, if you committed, one, you only got 18 months for committing a horrible rape and scarring a woman for life. But also, if you don't do anything bad in 10 years, you're not a rapist anymore. It just goes away. It's not like that anymore. Thank you, Austria. Thank you. Quick timeline of when that law was changed. It was actually the Fritzl case and another high-profile case that got the law changed in 2008. So that was like not recent, but kind of recent, which is crazy to me. Fritzl's reputation of being an independent, wealthy engineer began to grow. And so he decided to purchase a bunch of different guest houses, restaurants, 40-bedroom hotel that was 3 stories. And actually in 2017, one of the new owners of Fritzl's properties found like hidden stairs that led to nowhere and hidden rooms throughout the property. And now during this time also, when he's buying these properties, he was exemplified as a family man, much like the BTK killer. And apparently the very handsome and very charming, you know who I'm about to say, Ted Bundy. Now, I don't get that. I will still never get that. I might do an episode about how much I don't understand why people thought he was attractive. Give me Zac Efron Ted Bundy, and I got it. I got it. But not this guy. About 6 years later, Fritzl began to expand his home on 40 Ebestrasse Street. And he began to build a huge labyrinth cellar underneath the house. And again, around this time, he started to begin to show a very, very strong interest in his daughter, Elizabeth. He began showing extraordinarily obsessive tendencies like grooming when Elizabeth was about 12 years old. He would demand to know where she was at all times and also spy on her. He would ultimately escalate back to his psychosexual tendencies in his earlier life. And it just goes downhill from here. In 1981, Elizabeth enrolled in a gastronomy and tourism class, which caused her to be gone often, and this only fueled his obsession and got under his skin. And so he began to escalate of what he would do. So Fritzl began exposing himself to his daughter, leaving pornographic literature under her bed, and also sexually abusing her. Is pornographic literature a thing? I didn't know that was a thing. Ew. I'm not looking it up. I know I do a lot of research for these cases, but I ain't look. Nope. No. In 1983, he finished that god-awful cellar, and this is around the time that Elizabeth ran away to Vienna to escape her father's disgusting abuse. Unfortunately, the Vienna police picked her up and held on to her until her father could make the drive from Amstetten to Vienna to come get her. On the drive back, he spoke this ominous statement saying, "I'll never let you run away again." And this poor girl could not have known how true that statement was about to be, and under a year later. In May of 1984, Elizabeth made the very big and crucial mistake of telling her father she was going to move to Linz to live with her sister. He would not and could not let that happen. Okay, warning about what I'm about to say. Later on, when Fritzl was in prison, he told the psychiatrist that he didn't tell her that, but he told the psychiatrist that he would often fantasize of having dominant sexual relations with his mother. And the reason I am saying this is that they believe that he saw Elizabeth as like a replacement of his mother who already passed. And so he I'm sorry about the noises I'm making. I just can't help it. It's gross. It's gross.
What? You don't think about doing that to your mother? Prude.
I'm Josef Fritzl. I'm a stupid idiot and is gross and is a psychopath that's rotting in jail.
And has really bad eyebrows.
These are the times where I wonder why my family still accepts me, and why my boyfriend still loves me. Oh, it's like hardening. On August 28th, 1984, Fritzl asked Elizabeth an innocuous request of helping him lift a door that was in the garage. She agreed, and once that was done, he asked her to have a private talk in his study. When she walked in there and had her back turned against him, he put an ether-soaked rag on her face, which eventually knocked her out. Once she was unconscious, he carried her into the cellar he built and handcuffed her to a ring that was installed in the floor. Elizabeth had no way of knowing what was going to entail in that dark, humid, bug and rodent infested cellar that she was going to live in for the next 24 years. Now, I'm 27, okay? Well, about to be 27. Birthday, January 7th. I'm about to be 27. I'm imagining like only having 3 years so far of a normal life. She was in that cellar for 24 years. Fritzl made her write a letter to her family saying that she has ran away to join a satanic cult. Now, back in the 80s, big thing was satanic panic. And so the family didn't really question it. And he actually drove 100 miles away to drop the letter off and act like he found it somewhere. During this time, over the 24 years she was there, she was raped 3,000 times by her father. And with the frequency of these rapes, it was inevitable that she would get pregnant. And she did. Her first pregnancy was a miscarriage, but she ended up giving birth later on to a girl in 1988 named Kirsten. From there on out, when she did give birth, her father would leave her with a childbirth book, a rag, a pair of scissors, and a few wipes. And that's it. That's all she had to use to give birth. And she ended up giving birth 7 more times in that dark, humid cellar. Ugh, God, I hate this guy. In 1990, her second child, Stefan, was born. He grew up to have terrible back pain and misalignment because he grew up to be 5'8", and he would have to constantly lean and crouch in the cellar. So he's 5'8". So that should show you that since he's leaning and crouching, how small and compact that cellar was that they were living in. In August of 1992, Elizabeth gave birth to a third child named Lisa. Now, Lisa was born with a heart defect, and Fritzl did not want his family hearing a constantly crying and pained baby. So, what he did was literally put Lisa in a basket, put her on the doorstep, and forced Elizabeth to write a note saying that, like, this is my child, I can't take care of her, please take care of her. So Lisa ended up living upstairs with her family, who she thought were her grandparents, while her actual mother was downstairs with the rest of her other siblings. With the downstairs beginning to get crammed, he opened up the cellar to make, space for more rooms, and he even put in like a fridge that was like fully stocked all the time. He brought toys. He even bought a pet goldfish and a canary. So in short, he was basically trying to make this hellish lifestyle he created downstairs a little bit better. Here's a thought to make it better. Let them go. Let them go, turn yourself in, and rot. Elizabeth attempted to create her own kind of normalcy for the kids. She would wake them up at the same time every day, make them breakfast, and she even taught them how to read. All the while, her father would come downstairs and repeatedly rape her and abuse her in front of them. December 16th, 1994 was the arrival of Monica. Now, it doesn't really state what kind of qualifies you to be taken upstairs or kept downstairs. But just like Lisa, Monica was brought upstairs with the same situation, basket, saying Elizabeth, it's her child, can't take care of her. And Fritzl ended up getting financial assistance from Austrian services because he said, I have these 2 extra grandchildren because, my daughter is run away in a cult and I can't, I need help. And so the Austrian services didn't have any reason to probe this, scenario, because that stupid law about if you don't get in trouble for 10 years, your rape charges are expunged from your account. So this was 1994. It was 1967 whenever he got those charges. So it's been well over 10 years. So there was nothing on his record. And so they were like, okay, here you go. That stupid law. In April of 1996, Elizabeth gave birth to 2 twin boys, Michael and Alexander. Michael was born with a horrible breathing problem, and so Fritzl's solution was to just let him die. After Michael passed away, he threw his tiny little body into a furnace in the house. He then proceeded to take Alexander upstairs in the same form he did with Lisa and Monica. He felt that it was too risky to kill them both. I don't know. But fortunately, in the long run, Michael's death was able to be turned into a murder conviction against Fritzl later on. In 2002, Elizabeth gave birth to her 7th and final child from her father, a little boy named Felix. Fritzl became very fond of Felix and wanted to move him upstairs and kind of integrate both the families. He planned on releasing Elizabeth in 2008, and so he thought that the gaslighting and the intimidation that he had brought upon her in the earlier years, saying like if she tried to escape, there's subterranean gas traps, there's electrified doors, so if you touch it, you'll get shocked and die, and kind of that so when he does release her, she wouldn't be compelled to tell the authorities. But like every evil plan, his was foiled. Actually, Kirsten, when she was 19 years old, became deathly ill and almost in a comatose. All they had in the cellar to treat her symptoms, which were profuse sweating, unusually white skin, and symptoms of kidney failures, was aspirin. But you can't treat all that with aspirin. Despite what my dad says, he always said, if we get hurt, he says, tape an aspirin to it. If you're watching this, Dad, aspirin doesn't help symptoms of kidney failures. Can't tape an aspirin to it. Fortunately for Kirsten, her mom was steadfast and stood her ground when getting her to the hospital. She actually told Fritzl, if you let Kirsten die, I will no longer be able to live with myself. And so Fritzl ended up taking Kirsten to the doctors, and the doctors were confounded with the constellation of symptoms that Kirsten was showing, which ended up being a severe vitamin D deficiency. Even though, need I remind you, there is no sunlight. There's no sunlight anywhere in the cellar. And so Fritzl's solution to that was to get them vitamin D supplements and install lamps. But he's not a doctor. He's an idiot. And so, again, Kirsten developed a severe vitamin D deficiency. Kirsten basically had lost all her teeth. She developed a habit of pulling out her hair in clumps and eating it, and also shredding any clothing that was put on her apart and stuffing it down the toilet. At the hospital, Fritzl introduced himself as Kirsten's grandfather, and the doctors were not satisfied with that. They wanted to talk to her mother because they needed a background of Elizabeth's medical history to see how they could help Kirsten in a way. With this, Fritzl kept saying, I don't know where she is. You know, she ran off with a satanic cult, like haven't seen her, blah, 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 blah. This is when the police get involved. They searched for Elizabeth for about a week, and then with not finding her, they made a nationally televised kind of PSA asking for Elizabeth to come home. The police were planning on charging Elizabeth with severe neglect. And when she was sitting in her cellar, she had this tiny TV in there, and I don't know how, by the grace of God, she just happened to have the TV on and saw this broadcast. When Fritzl returned home, she told him, "You're going to take me to that hospital or I'm going to kill myself down here." He ended up taking her. Upon getting to the hospital, Elizabeth was immediately arrested and taken in for interrogation. It wasn't until they threatened to take her children away that she began to tell them everything that has been happening to her in the past 24 years. And thank goodness for the Austrian police, because they believed every word she said. And Josef Fritzl was immediately arrested, and the other children were freed from the cellar. This stupid Austrian ugly man pled not guilty to rape, false imprisonment, and deprivation of liberty. Anyways, Elizabeth and her children began intense therapy, and she did a recorded deposition of her story where members of the public and press were not allowed in at all. Y'all, when I read this next part, I screamed. As a final surprise, this warrior woman showed up to her father's trial. Showed up. And apparently when he saw her, he started to uncontrollably cry and changed his plea to guilty. Josef Fritzl was sentenced to life imprisonment with possibility of parole after 15 years. Not sure if he has gotten parole. It was 2008 this happened. I cannot do 2023. Oh my God, that's coming up soon. Don't parole him. Don't parole him. You hear me, Austrian? Don't parole him. As of November 21st, 2020, He is still alive and suffering in prison. He apparently does have dementia now, which I hope is no. Can I say that? No? Okay, I'm gonna be nice. I hope his dementia makes all his memories even worse of what he did. Elizabeth and her children still undergo intensive therapy. They reportedly have intense anxiety and panic attacks whenever they hear a door closing or they hear a door locking, which is so, so sad. But there's always light at the end of a very, 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 very dark tunnel. They are now living in what Austrians call Village X, which is like a very private, disclosed neighborhood in a way, where they are away from public scrutiny or the press, anything like that. And also, I love this, Elizabeth found love in the bodyguard that was hired by the Austrian government to protect her. He was hired to protect her, and now he is going to protect her because he's in love, and they're in love. I love love. It's so great. Thank y'all so much for watching. It feels good to be back. To wrap this up, I am going to give the last word not to Josef Fritzl. He can go ahead and rot and burn in prison right now. And I'm going to give the last words to Kirsten, who said this upon waking up from her coma. Quote, "A new life is starting for all of us. Let us be happy."